Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So here we go. Sorry, I'm just a tiny bit late. I forgot my drink out there, and I wouldn't be able to get through this discussion for very long without that. So, anyways, I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. I'm going to put my glasses on here. Grandizer's here with all of his drum instruments going on. So for those of you who are new, this is a show I put on every Friday. Basically, the show is just basic discussion about various prog progressive rock topics. So I chose a topic this week because I've got a lot of these, so I thought it was important to kind of discuss some of these bands. So these are progressive rock bands, but they're not the top echelon bands. This isn't Yes or Pink Floyd or Rush or Genesis or any of those bands because they already get a lot of attention. The other attention this isn't about those secondary bands that there are people that even don't listen to prog music kind of know about them. Bands like Gentle Giant and King Crimson, Marillion, some of these bands that, a lot of people are familiar, Eloy's another band like that, where people kind of they've heard of them or they know of them, but they may not know much about them. These are those bands that the only people that are really listening to these bands and know about them are people who are progressive rock junkies or YouTube people who love this kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's the kind of band we doing. I'm doing very well, Grandizer. Thank you for asking. Yeah, there's a lot of questions, but I'll answer your question, but let's get on with the show first. So, so I've picked out 6 bands. I got a reasonable stack of CDs here that represent these bands, and I thought, you know what? I want to give these bands their due too. For many of you, it'll seem like, oh wow, that band's well known. What are you talking about? But it isn't. That's the thing. It is to you and I because we do this stuff all the time, right? Good day, Ben. Good to have you on the show. I don't know what time it is over there, but I'm sure it's late. So I'm glad to have you in, or maybe it's early in the morning. It's probably early in the morning there. I was in New Zealand, but it's been like 30 years ago. I can't remember the time differential. Midday? Oh, okay. That's good. Anyway, so what I've done is I've picked out 6, and I may do a second episode of this because I have a lot more stuff, but I've picked out 6 bands that I think of as really good progressive rock bands or progressive rock bands that I've liked or ones I've explored recently that aren't in those top 2 tiers. They're not a first tier. They're not the tier right underneath. They're kind of, in different places. And I had a few others I was going to replace, but if I'm going to do a second episode, I'll do it on those. So anyways, just going to talk about some of these bands. Some of these bands, actually, this one band here, Ben gave me, and this particular album he gave me. So the first band we're going to talk about is IQ. This is the Wake album. Just got it recently. Look at that. I cracked it already. I've only had the thing for like a month and it's got a crack in it. I think it came that way though. I think it was cracked in the envelope when I opened it. But anyways, this was the first album that I had the first album that I was introduced to by this band. And actually you, Ben, gave me this album. This started off at the first listen through. I wasn't sure I liked it because I wasn't into the vocalist, but subsequent listen to, I got over my initial kind of whatever my problem was. I don't even know what it was, but then I liked it, and I liked it a lot. And I remember saying to Ben, this may be the home run of this whole series that we did when we did Ben's album challenge. So I like this album a lot. I've got it. It's waiting its turn to be put in the playlist. Just a fantastic first album for me by the band. This one is the one that's currently in my playlist. Yeah, so he's in the comment section. You want to talk to him, go right ahead. I'm sure he'll love that. Sorry, Ben, don't mean to put you on the spot, but you are the result of this band. So this is the current album in my playlist by this band. This is a actual double album. So it's taken a bit of time for it to work its way on me, this particular album. Although yesterday I felt a little bit more, I was enjoying it quite a bit when I was put the second CD in. It's a strong album, lots of really good stuff. The vocals here are good, solid. This one comes with 2 different CDs, one for each. So it's a double album, basically, is what it is. Just trying to put this back in place. So we've got a pink one and a blue one. Their artwork is good, a little bit more what you expect from an 80s look. So this band is a band that yeah, I don't know that he really wants to come in and do that, but thanks anyways. Yeah, so anyways, we dropped this what was I saying about this album? Yeah, so this is a band that kind of came in with that second tier of progressive rock albums, progressive bands that came out in the 80s, what they would call the neo-prog bands, if you prefer. They came out in the 80s. This is one of those bands. And to me, not only is this one of the bands, this is the best of those bands. Some of the other bands, Marillion is a great band, of course. I'm not going to take anything away from them. But for me, Marillion only was progressive on those first 4 albums, and some people would question whether they're even progressive on those albums. But they were kind of the face of that new wave of progressive rock. But this band has continued and has continued to get better as it goes along. I highly recommend these guys. The next album up, of course, is their 7th House album. This is a good album. I don't think it's a great album. For me, it might be their weakest of their albums that I have, but it's still a fantastic album. You gotta like this album. Yeah, it's got some really solid stuff on here. Just really like it a lot. The next one, of course, is my favorite of their albums. Every song on here is a classic killer album. This is a killer classic album, Dark Matter. It's a bit of a darker album, yes, a little bit darker. Yeah, I wouldn't even know how to hook the link up, to be honest with you. That's part of the problem. I'm still kind of working my way through the computer, but to be honest with you, 4 years ago, I didn't even know how to turn the thing on. So I'm coming a long way here. So this is, I think many people feel this may be their best album. To me, this is one of not only their best albums, but one of the best albums of this century as far as progressive rock goes. I would rate this in the top 5 best albums, period, for that and for this entire century. Yeah, just a fantastic band. So I really highly recommend them. I've got some more that I've collected. You're going to see that when I do the new albums I purchased for the month. You'll see that I've purchased some more of their stuff. They have like a lot of really solid albums. So that's the first band we're talking about tonight, which is IQ. The next band, it's got a little bit of a family connection to IQ, is a Drifting Sun. Their connection, of course, is Joe Jowett, who is the bass player, as you see right here, right where my finger is. He also plays with IQ. I like these guys. This is a solid album. I would like to collect some more of them. I think I probably end up going to purchase them all eventually, but for now, this is the one that I have. It did well. Didn't do great. I don't think it's a fantastic album, but it's still a solid album. Yeah, well, I may do all the work, Ben, but it's really important to get ideas. I have a lot of my own ideas, as you know, a lot of stuff I come up with on my own, but it's nice to get a fresh perspective because the thing I like about Ben is he will pick stuff that I probably wouldn't pick myself, but it forces me to listen to the stuff like it did with IQ, and then I end up liking the stuff. So that's what it's all about to me. People say, try this, try that. Some people, I don't really listen to what they like because not that what they like is wrong or anything like that. It's just that I know from experience with them that I probably won't like what they suggest. Whereas Ben tends to like a lot of the same stuff that I like. So when he suggests something that maybe I've not listened to before, I haven't followed, I take that seriously because if he likes a lot of what I like, it's a good chance I'll probably like that too. And that's to me what it's all really about. This is, a good album. I bought this from their website. It's pretty solid. It has a little bit of that IQ flavor to it, but it isn't one of the neo prog bands. So yeah, fantastic album though. Drifting Sun. I think they've got about 5 or 6 albums. I could be wrong, but I think there's about 5 or 6. I'd like to go down that rabbit hole, as Grandizer is saying. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, we might be due for another album battle. My problem with album battles is that I did a lot of these with my friend as a kid. Used to do these all the time, and um, you know how it is when the saying is too much of a good thing isn't always a good thing. Well, we did this constantly, and after a while, I was getting tired of it. That's part of my resistance to it. It's nothing to do with the idea that Ben has come up with. Album battles are good and stuff like that. We will probably do another one. They tend to be really good, but after a couple of them, I kind of like start getting that feeling again and just want to be away from it for a bit. But we will try something again. There's no doubt about that. So the other albums, the next group. So we've done Drifting Sun and IQ. The next group, many people know that I have the entire collection now. Know that I've been into this band. They were a band that actually came from one of these album battles. So we had the Great Album War or the Great Prog War, and then we had the Lesser Prog War, and this band came from the Lesser Prog War. They didn't actually do that well in the Prog War. They were knocked out fairly early, but I think it was because they got lined up against somebody who they couldn't beat, and so they got early on. But now I really like them a lot, and it's not because I think they're a better band than those other bands. It's just it was easier to find their material. The place that I go to are Encore Videos in the Encore Record Store on King Street here in Kitchener. They didn't have a lot of these bands, but they had an album collection from this band. So the band, of course, I'm talking about is Green Slade. This is a live album by them that I got recently. I will probably do a live experience on this. I like this a lot. I actually think this is better than their studio albums, which is I have to say that's a bit of a rare thing for me because I tend with live albums, I can take them or leave them. I prefer live DVDs than I do the albums. Um, and I almost never pick the live albums over the studio albums. And there are some exceptions, of course. The Kiss live album, I definitely do. This one is great, though. I really like it. And the Eloy album is quite good as well. So the other ones that I have are the Green Slades. This is actually their 3rd and 4th albums. Spyglass Guest and Time and Tide. And the other one, which is currently Green Slade, their debut album, which is the first one up here, is currently on my playlist. And beside Bedtime Manners is the album on the backside of this. So this comes with 2 CDs. So each CD has one of the albums on it. I can't get it open. I don't want to force it. So the thing I like about this band is green is, as you probably have figured out over watching this channel, is my favorite color. This is really green, and there's a lot of green, and there's a lot of leprechaun type stuff, and I'm Irish, and all that stuff always interests me. This is also artwork from Roger Dean. Of course, we all know he's with Yes, and that I also like. So this band has really grown on me, despite the fact that there's no guitars on I believe the first 2 albums, and then they take on some guitars. The funny thing about this band is that I listened to all 4 of them, and then, of course, started with this one in my playlist. But part of that was I noticed that each album that subsequent album I liked a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to see how that ends up playing out. So yeah, so Green Slade, highly recommend them, like them a lot, despite the fact their earlier albums don't have any guitar. And I tend not to just like keyboard albums. But for some reason, I like them a lot. I think it's possible that it's the way in which they present their keyboards that intrigues me. I have a real difficult with bands that kind of meander a lot. Okay, so let me see what Grand is down to music. Okay, so I got this feeling that tonight's going to be a good night, that tonight's going to be a good night, that tonight's going to be a good night. Yep. I like all of the different instruments you put on there. Originally, I had come up with the concept of doing a Prog monster. So I had taken one of the monsters out of one of my Conan, the Savage Sword of Conan magazines, and had come up with an idea that I was going to have the tentacles from this monster. Each at the end of each was going to have a keyboard, a drum, a guitar, a bass, a microphone, and whatever other instrument I was going to put in there. I think it was going to be the flute, and have this artist do it so that I could present it as my background instead of the background you have. However, that didn't work out. It didn't pan out with the artist, but my daughter came in and put this background on that you see now. And so all that's her ingenuity. She actually is a computer wizard. I'm hoping to make some big changes in that direction this year coming. Some stuff that I want to try to add, get some skill at doing. It's just work has been taking up a lot of time. So at any rate, that's the next band out, Green Slade. So the next one out, you've all seen me talk about this band. I'm going to give you two of the albums currently. I forgot to take the other one. I actually think it's out in the player, in the Sony player out now, out in the front room. So that may be why I don't have it here. But so the next band is Wobbler. This is a Finnish progressive rock band. To be honest with you, I think the Finns really have the more market cornered on progressive rock in this particular time period. This is a really good album. The artwork, of course, is fabulous. This was my first experience with them, and the songs on here are really good. I like them a lot. The next one is this one, which is currently waiting its turn for my playlist, and then the one that's on the playlist, Dwellers of the Deep, which I think is maybe their best album. This one looks pretty good. I have another one that's in for the new albums purchased for the month. So I got 4 of them now. I think there's 5 total. So I'm just missing the one. I like these guys a lot. They have a very Yes sound to them. Even the vocalist has a very John Anderson-like flavor to him. And this is just fabulous stuff. They tend to write a lot more epic length songs too, which I also like. And they don't meander. And a lot of their sound, they use only instruments from pre-1975. So that sound, that Yes sound, is like almost duplicated on some of their songs. Some of their albums are a little more Yes sounding than the others. And the ones with the newer vocalist is better than the older vocalist. So that's Wobbler. I got this feeling that I wanted to talk a little bit another band. I didn't bring out any of their albums, so we'll do that for the next episode. So I'll just leave that. And some of the Norwegian stuff from different Norwegian bands came together and put the 3 albums together. So you probably know I'm talking about the Chronicles of Father Robin. I now have all 3 albums. So I'm looking forward to, maybe I'll do those next week once the new one gets open to and listened to, and we'll be getting on with that. So the next band that I wanted to talk about is this band, Jade Warrior. I love their album covers. Again, there's a lot of green here. I hate to say it. Sometimes I buy albums for the covers than I do for the music. These guys are very different. So this particular album is waiting its turn. Yeah, this one's waiting its turn to go in my playlist. The other one, you can see here, The Last Autumn's Dream. This one I've listened to. This is got a lot of that kind of Oriental flavor to it at times. It's got some, obviously it's got prog stuff. It has some psychedelic stuff on it as well. The other thing is it's got some quirky stuff too that doesn't really fit in. It's kind of like with Kansas, where they do all this kind of really meandering kind of progressive rock, and then they have these boogie songs thrown in there. It doesn't quite fit. And there's a few of that kind of type stuff going on here too with this album. But the artwork, as you can see, is fabulous. Some fabulous artwork on this album, and even better on this one, I think. This one kind of has a little bit more of that Greenslade feel to it. I'm not sure who the artist is here. If anybody knows, put that in the comment section. I don't see any indication as to who does the artwork. I probably could look it up online and find it. And this album is a little bit similar to the other one in that it has some progressive stuff. There's some classical stuff. There's some a little bit of that psychedelic stuff, like the Psychiatric Sergeant here. You see it right there at the bottom of this middle row here. There's some kind of funky stuff. There's different stuff on this album. It's not completely 100% progressive rock. I think that's the reason I bought it, for the progressive rock. But yeah, lots of really good stuff here. Yeah, the album covers for Jade Warrior are among the best. I think they have, and I think there's like 3 albums in the original collection. They did 3, and then they broke up for a long time, and they may have done a couple more, something like what Greenslade did. They did 4 and then came back. Here's a picture of the guys in the band. Yeah, I think Jade Warrior from the early 70s. It doesn't say, of course, you know how albums are now. They'll give you the remastered date, and they don't tell you when the album originated because they don't want you to think it's an old album. That's the only thing I can come up with why they wouldn't do that. But anyways, both of these have, these are what they would call a digipack, right? So I'm not a big fan of digipacks. They break easy. That's one of the things I don't like about them. And if they break, you can't really replace them, right? Because everything's built into this pack, right? So yeah, they come out with these little books too. And the thing I like about this, it gives you a little bit of a history of how the album was put together, who was in the album, why they did it the way they did it, what they were attempting to do, all that kind of stuff is what normally kind of a history of it. Yeah, they actually considered themselves, I guess at that time, they might have considered themselves to be what we would call psychedelic, a psychedelic band, but this was almost early on in the history of progressive rock. Maybe it wasn't so much labeled. I'm trying to see what year this was, and it doesn't give it to me. But I believe it was early 70s, like 71, 70, 71, 72, in that time period. Like these guys a lot. You might say it on this album. This was their debut album, I believe. Or actually, this might be their second album. Maybe, this one I think is their debut. Yeah, I think this might be like their second or possibly even their third album. It's hard to get these. I actually ordered all 3 of their first 3 albums, and they only had the 2. They only had the 1, which was this one. So I've been waiting for him to get more of their stuff. He may do it. It's hard to say. Yeah, it doesn't give this date here on this one either. I just find it silly that they do that. Like it only takes 1 line. Album originally printed in 1971 and remastered in 2022. Is that really that hard to do? So that's Jade Warrior. The last band, another kind of green album. This one's kind of a funny one, though. I don't know if many people, well, maybe I'm guessing that you guys maybe have heard of these guys, Tuscamore. I think that's how you say their name. Just looking, because it's kind of the way they printed it, it's not easy to understand what it's called. Tusmarok. I'm not sure. These guys, I think there's at least one member of this band that has played on the Chronicles. They're one of the bands that have contributed to the Chronicles of Father Robin. That's part of the reason why I got it. It was on sale too. through laser CD. I mean, once you get the exchange rate and you get the shipping fee, it really doesn't end up being much of a deal. But hard albums to find. This is a difficult album to find, but I like this quite a bit. Trying to see if I can see the name of the guy who plays on the album, and I don't see it. Doesn't even say when this was released, but these guys are definitely Norwegian. Tuskmore. This album is actually not in English. It's all in Norwegian, I believe. Actually, by looking at it, I would say this might be Finnish. I think these guys are actually Finnish, not Norwegian. But anyway, Scandinavian for sure. It's an interesting looking cover, if you haven't seen it. It's got these animals. It's almost like Animal Farm a little bit, or like Thornton W. Burgess's Creatures. So you got this kind of tree with kind of elfish looking houses in it. And there's a little guy here in the corner, and then you got these animals. And then on the back side of the album, of course, you got the writing. It's a little bit darker looking. Inside is a little bit more kind of cartoonish with a dark album. So this is very different. Now, there's no words in English, so that's going to be a hard sell for me. Sorry. Okay, so what is he? Yeah, I've heard of these guys, College, and I've heard of this album, Moonshine, but I haven't actually had a chance to listen to it. Yeah, I've been looking for the one. I like a certain type of CD rack, Ben, and there was lots of them for a while there, but there seems to be a dried spell. I haven't seen any for a while, but I keep looking, and the price of them too. When I was buying them, were like $3 or $4 each. Now all of a sudden, like the CDs, even they went from like $2 in these thrift shops to $5 because they realize people want them, and that's why they're doing it. So I've been looking for some, but I just haven't seen any. So I'm thinking of buying a jumbo rack. I'm just looking for the right one with the right spacing. Not like my bookshelves are too big. I want one with the appropriate amount of space for CDs. I may get a rack instead because right now I got stuff piled everywhere, as you probably have seen. Plus, I've been collecting too much. I don't really have the money for it, but I'm collecting them anyways. So that's the albums I chose for tonight's collection. Tried to be a little bit variety. I wanted to do a little bit of the neo-prog stuff because it doesn't get enough attention. There are lots of bands in that neo-prog that I would love to get into. Bands like North Star and Pendragon and Palace and some of those bands, but it's difficult to find them. They do have some Palace and Pendragon, I have to admit to that. And I did get one, but I got it through Laser CD. But it's been difficult to find that stuff because it's anything that is what we would call international is difficult to get because for them to order it, they have to pay more, so they have to charge more, and then it's hard to sell them. And that's part of the reason why I don't think they do more of the domestic stuff. When I say domestic, I mean here in the United States. But they don't carry a lot of that progressive stuff that I like. In fact, they don't even. A couple times I've asked about certain albums, they don't even know who the band is really. So it's to be understandable. We're very lucky. We have half a dozen YouTube sites with some really excellent channel hosts that really delve into a lot of stuff that you don't normally get. And they're collectors, Brendan Snyder, that guy has the biggest collection of CDs I've ever seen. And he is like the neatest. He knows how to pile stuff. He knows how to organize stuff. He knows all the different ins and outs of keeping them clean. The guy is like a virtuoso in that area. I love to watch the stuff that he's almost like a teacher. That's what I like about his show. My friend Jack, of course, who is also Canadian. Jack is a collector like me. He likes to go around and find the stuff, but he also likes to order the stuff in through line 2. I like his stuff a lot. And of course, we all like Sea of Tranquility because nowhere are we more inundated with stuff that we never heard of than on that channel. I mean, I think I know a lot of stuff, and then I go on there and they'll talk for an hour about albums I've never heard. Unbelievable. But it's great stuff, right? So all of this is great. I have a bit of the bug for collecting. There's certain things I collect, and CDs is one of them. Yes, I know what you're saying. I suspect I'll have to get another apartment soon to put my stuff in. Oh, that would be generous of you, but I don't expect that. I wouldn't even know where to put them, to be honest, at this point. But yeah, I really, yeah, it's probably not worth sending stuff from Australia to here. The cost would be almost pre. Wouldn't it would be easier to just go and find them, and it would be cheaper that way too. But I appreciate the offer, though. That's very kind of you. Yeah, the Romantic Warrior album, Grandizer is talking about Return to Forever and the Romantic Warrior album. That is one of the few albums that I consider to be a jazz fusion album that I actually like quite a bit. As you know from watching the channel, well, Ben will tell you this, he knows for sure that I'm not huge on instrumental albums. There are some I like, but none of them ever really reach any kind of superstar status with me. But I do like that album a lot. I've looked for that album. I do have some stuff that's what I would call jazz fusion. I don't listen to it that much though. It's a once in a while thing. I'm not really a jazz guy, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The music that really gets me is, of course, progressive rock. I do like, if I had to make a second choice, it would probably be hard rock. And then metal, very closely followed by metal. Psychedelic, folk music I like as well. Some country type folk music, mostly Canadian stuff I like. I'm not as big on the the southern United States, southern music, what you might want to call it. I don't dislike it. It's just not something I follow. Jazz, rhythm and blues, I'm not a big fan of anymore. I was at one point, don't really follow that much anymore. I do have quite a bit of that stuff though, still. But if I could only listen to two types of music, it would be progressive rock and hard rock. Those are the two I like the most. Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as Ben. I like pretty much the same things that he likes that way. He likes the prog, he likes the hard rock. And I also understand what you're saying. Sometimes you can't decide which one you like more. Some days I really like the hard rock a lot, and then other times I really like the progressive stuff a lot. I do have I did at one time have a real strong love of metal, and it's kind of made a comeback because a couple of the albums that have done particularly well with me on my playlist have both been metal albums. The new Judas Priest, the No Prayer for the Dying, of course. And there's one more that I'm going to pick up tomorrow that I ordered that they told me was in. I hope it's not going to break my bank, but I wanted to get it, and I'm probably going to go down to get it. And that's the one I just did a What's New on last week, and it's eluding me at this moment in time. I knew it. If you'd asked me 10 minutes ago, I could have told you, but can't remember right now. Yeah, for me, it's pretty much the 70s. I grew up in the 70s. And I will tell you that most of the stuff I love is from the 70s. All of the cartoons that I have on DVD, or I had on DVD, my daughter took them when she moved out, but we're almost all from the 70s. I have a vast comic collection, which probably exceeds what I have in CDs. It's probably in the close to 2,000 range, but all of that stuff's from the 60s and 70s, a little bit of the 80s as well. And then, of course, I like hats too, as you probably figured out. But the CDs is really the love right now, and books as well. And most of the books I like are from that science fiction realm, history of Civil War, that kind of stuff. But for me, and I know that Ben, you probably discovered this at the same time as when you probably went through the same period of time where you thought there was like I did. I thought there was like maybe 6 or 7 progressive rock bands, and I liked 5 of them. And then once they all changed into these pop bands, I thought that's it. I was very disappointed because I thought that's the end of prog music, and I'll only be able to listen to these albums that I bought from those bands. It was very disappointing. And then and that went on for years until I started this channel. Now, I did know there was a few other bands like Gentle Giant and that, but I never really followed them because I never really liked them. Once I discovered this YouTube, and I discovered the Sea of Tranquility, and then branched out to some other people that I like as well, I started realizing how many prog bands there are. It's ridiculous how many progressive rock bands there are. Oh, the Groovy Ghoulies. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I was more of a Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner Hour, Pink Panther, and Wheelie and a Chopper Bunch kind of guy. Yes, I figured out who you were talking about. I did like the Flintstones, and I did like, I do have to say, I didn't mind the Jetsons. There was one other one that I liked quite a bit too. Well, I liked all the Pink Panther stuff with the Blue Aardvark and the Pink Panther and that kind of stuff. I had all of that on CDs, but my daughter took that because she was a huge fan of the Pink Panther too. And when she moved out, that went with her along with almost all the cartoons. I think I have one. I think I just have the one left now. Underdog? Underdog. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Are you talking about Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Grandizer. I don't remember Underdog. So you grew up in the 60s. So you like the cartoons from then? And probably some of the TV shows too, like Leave It to Beaver, Adam 12, and that kind of stuff. The Wheelie and Chopper Bunch was only on for 2 seasons. I'm going to say it was 73 and 74. And it was just a cartoon about cars. And I was big into cars when I was from about 8 until I was about 13. I had a friend of mine. We used to sit on his porch, and we had this what do you call them? Can't think what they're called. Clipboard. We had a clipboard, and we'd have all the list of all the makes of cars and the models of cars on this list. And he had all the like N to P, and he had N to Z, and I had the A to M. And every time a car would go by, we would check it off because we were trying to do a survey on what kind of cars were driving out there. And we always knew when the Plymouths were coming because their tires squealed. Oh, it's a Plymouth. We knew that because all of the cop cars in Toronto when I was a kid were all Plymouths. Underdog, the dog that takes a pill and turns into a superhero. I don't remember that. That must have been before me. I don't have a car anymore. I just got rid of it. Had it for a long time, but it's gone. My friend took it. He's a car collector, so he been at me for the car, so I gave it to him. Yeah, I don't remember that Underdog. That's strange because I used to watch Land of the Lost too. That was another show I watched a lot of. But from about 12 on, till I was about 20. I didn't watch TV anymore. I kind of got out of the TV thing when I was about 12 or 13, and then comics took over for me. Yeah, it's not bad. I use my bike a lot. I have a Jameis. It cost me a couple thousand. My mountain bike, that is. I drive that everywhere. I'm very much into that because I have a bad knee, so it helps with my knee, and that's part of the reason why I drive it. And it's not as expensive either. I did have I do have a trailer as well, a motorhome, if you want to call it, which I drive in the summer sometimes, although it needs some work on it now. So I'm not sure I'm even going to keep it. I don't remember the Dick Tracy cartoon. I remember it vaguely, but it's not something I watched. I don't remember it. Yeah, parts of Canada has good transportation. Toronto probably has the best transportation in of any place I've seen anywhere at any time. That any place I've ever been, it probably has the best. Where I am here, it has shitty transportation. I never use it. Pretty much my bike or I walk. Those are my pretty much my transportation here. I was using the car on occasion if I needed it, but now I don't have it, so I don't have to worry about it. I remember Johnny Quest, yes. I never watched it a lot, but I do remember it. I used to watch the Spider-Mans from the 60s. They were horrible cartoons, but I watched them anyways. I think it was Spider-Man that got me into comics. I'm pretty sure it was him. That's who I started with. Soon branched out to the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. Those were the ones for a while. And then eventually my friend convinced me to get into the X-Men, and then after that it was the Defenders and the Champions and whoever else came along. But those, and I did like the monster comics too. Like, yeah, there's a couple of the titles: Werewolf by Night, Morbus the Vampire, those type of things. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I fully understand where you're coming from there. When I lived in Fort Erie, which was 12 years ago or 11 years ago now, um, yeah, there was. I worked in Niagara Falls, so a car was a necessity. It was when I came here that when my car engine went on my Corolla, I decided not to renew it. Then I started using my bike a lot more. Plus, the cost of cars is just shot right up. I don't remember Johnny Soko and his flying robot. I do remember. No, I never collected the Kiss comics. I just wasn't interested. I never collected them. I actually haven't collected. I stopped collecting them in the '80s because the problem that was happening had been happening for a few years, where uh, they had so many series going on, and I never collected DC. I was always a Marvel guy. So in the late '70s, Marvel's different. Up until the mid '70s, they probably had maybe 20 titles, two or three monster titles, the Conan titles, and mostly maybe half a dozen to a dozen series that were um, superhero stuff. And then they exploded. It just exploded. Then next thing you know, there's like 60 titles a week. And so what happens when you get too much of something, it's not necessarily a good thing. As you know, you usually end up with, they have to use artists that aren't really that good. There's two or three of them that were terrible. And then you don't have, instead of having a half a dozen really good artists and writers doing all your titles, now you got all these people filling in that aren't that good. And what they did that I didn't like is they put some of these new artists on some of the titles that I really liked a lot. There was a comic strip called The Invaders book, and they got this artist. I don't even remember his name now, but he was terrible, and I stopped collecting them because of that. And then he moved on to a couple of other titles that I liked, and I didn't like the way he did them, so I stopped reading them. And then pretty soon, the storylines started getting stupid, and then I just I started collecting this one from an Epic Comics called Alien Legion, which Epic was a kind of a sideshow for Marvel, and I liked that a lot. The art was good, the comic was good, but they only did two 20-issue runs, and then they stopped. And once that stopped, I stopped. By that time, I was probably 20 years old, so I gave up on it. Women came into my life, destroyed me. However, I've been in recent years, the last couple of years, because of the comic geezers that God, my brain just doesn't function at this time of night, I have to say. Yeah, the Comic Geezers, which is one of the shows that's kind of an offshoot of Sea of Tranquility that Pete Pardo does. I like that a lot, and it's really kind of, over the last year or so, kind of motivated me to collect more. The only problem is they're so expensive. The ones, I don't want to collect anything past 1980, so if I want anything that I'm going to be interested in, it's going to have to come from the 70s and 60s, and those comics are expensive. I know that because I had 2 issues of the Fantastic Four, 2 issue ones of the Fantastic Four, and I sold one of them for a fair bit of money a few years ago. I don't know that artist. Sorry, I don't know him. Can't say too much about him. The name is not familiar at all. And yeah, I never collected those Kiss comics. I never liked them. I think I got the one. I may have one of them. And I used to collect all of the Toronto Sun used to put out a comic book on the Sunday, and I used to collect that. I got about 80 of them, but it's been a long time since I've collected any of those, like maybe 40 years. But I'm just going to talk a little bit more about these albums, and then I'm going to have to go because I've got some baseball to check out before it's too late in the evening. So Tuscamore, Bidra, I can't even pronounce this. Bidera, I think it's called. Good album. Check it out if you have a chance. Jade Warriors, The Last Autumn Dream, and then this one, which is their debut album. Wobblers Afterglow. It's kind of a weird cover on it. I'm not sure if I like it. It looks kind of messed up, actually. This one's a much better album cover. Hinterland, which is their debut album. Green Slade. Both the Green Slade collection, so I've got all 4 of their original albums. I don't have the more recent one. I did listen to it. I wasn't really impressed with it. And then the live one, of course. Drifting Sun. This album is called Veil. Sorry, I'm getting a pop-up here, which is blocking the screen. And then all of the IQ albums. Dark Matter. The Seventh House. Subterranean. This is a double album, of course, and Wake. And I have another one that's on the shelf, but I don't want to give away my new stuff until it's new stuff time. Oh, I play online Stratomatic 365, so usually I have to have the games in by 10 o'clock, so that's part of it. And also have a lot of Stratomatic cards because that's a board game I play a lot. And there's a guy on YouTube who does who plays the Stratomatic game, and he's the best at it. It's called Baseball Demos. His name's Dave. Really good at it. I watch almost all of his videos all the time. I don't watch hockey. I know that's strange. I'm Canadian. I was addicted to hockey until I was in my 40s. And then one time the Leafs got knocked out of the playoffs and I was pissed. So I canceled my cable subscription, figuring I would go back to it about a week from then. And it never happened. I never went back. And I haven't watched hockey since Sidney Crosby's first year in the league. Bale, isn't that a Conan thing? I think it's a Conan thing. I just don't watch it anymore. Yeah, it was, but I got over the madness. But what happened was it was in 2006. That's when the NHL players' contract was up. And once Bettman, he got in there, he won, kind of broke the union, and the whole game changed. It completely changed. The game that they're playing now, I think, to me, hockey's been gone for 20 years. This is not hockey anymore. It's, to me, I played these kind of games when I was playing hockey. I used to play for weeks called shinny. We called it shinny, where we go up and it just doesn't have any kind of physical element to the game anymore. And I don't like the overtime rules. I don't like the 3-on-3 rules. Either play hockey or don't play it. If you're going to play hockey, play it. I just don't. I just have no interest in the game at all. Baseball is a different story, though. Even though they've made some stupid rule changes in baseball too, I can still tolerate that a little bit more. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Now I know where you're getting it from. I didn't realize we were talking about that. Cross check? No, I'm not big on cross checking, but I do like body checking. And I was a fighter. I like the fighting. I have to say it. I like the rough game. The game to me should be intimidating. Players now freewheel like they're dancing like ballerinas. I can't watch it anymore. Guys doing moves that they would never do in a real game of hockey. So for me, it's pretty much done. And then when they put in I call it the communist rule. The communist rules, when they made everybody equal by pay, then to me the game no longer exists. You'll never get teams like Montreal Canadiens from the 1970s or the Islanders in the 80s. Or Edmonton in the 80s. You'll never get teams like that again because nobody can afford to keep those players all on one team anymore. Yeah, I understand. Or maybe you're American too. There's just a different thing about. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the home run races too. They've the problem with baseball now is that people don't want to watch a slow game. So instead of go find something to watch that you want, they try to change the game, speed it up. It's not meant to be a sped up game. It's a thinking man's game. It's kind of like cricket, or in Canada we have curling. That's like that. These are games of slow strategy and thinking. They're not games of. You want to watch something fast paced? Watch Formula One or something, right? Yeah, I figured you were American because you have a problem with baseball. I'm Canadian. I have a problem with hockey for the same reason. I get it. Anyways, I didn't mean to digress my music channel into a baseball hockey discussion, but it sometimes happens. I get it. Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm probably going to do this again next week. I've got enough to do a second episode. There's enough of my. I have enough stuff to do a second episode, and so I want to do one. Me, I've always liked the length of baseball. I always like the fact that it goes 162 games. It really is. It's very different than any other sport. It really is. You can be the best team at the beginning of the year and still not make the playoffs, right? That's what I like about it. And I've always liked the intricacies of the game. I was a huge fan of the Jays and the Cubs in the 70s, and then uh, in the 80s as well. And then I kind of drifted away once the Jays won the second World Series. Wasn't it really that intentional? I was a big fan of Dave Steve, and he left and went to Chicago and then retired. And I kind of lost interest in the game. But in the last decade or so, I've kind of come back to it. I don't watch it as much as I like to play it. Nah, no politics. I'll steer out of that one. You can get lost in a world unto itself in that. Anyways, I thank you guys for coming out tonight. Ben Grandizer, it was really good of you guys to show up and have something to say on the channel. It's good. I think it'll build up a little bit more as we go along. It takes a little bit of time to get that to going. And then eventually I'd like to do the kind of guests things where I have guests on or have people from other channels do stuff with me. That would be good. But first I got to get a little bit more comfortable with that aspect. So this is part of it. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Good night.